Response video to a pretty horrible Fred video on Conference Report. So this is the arrogant guy who critiques other people's right to opine on scientific subjects, and he's pretty much making some kind of like easy bake oven variety of evolution. I mean, just some sort of pink plastic description of the mechanism, and especially as it's described in Dawkins' Selfish Gene book, which is basically a pretty clinical, cold explanation of the crude reality we exist in, which is the game is played by individual pieces essentially, and there's not much else going on here. There's no love, okay, in the system. There's parasitic relationships that can evolve into mutually parasitic relationships, and that's pretty much all that happens.
I can't remember what Dawkins says about this, but certainly kind of cruder versions of selfish gene theory as it comes to evolutionary psychology, that kind of thing, tend to treat the relationship between the gene and the activity that they're kind of associated with, altruistic behavior, for example.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as altruistic behaviors. That's just bullshit, okay? Altruism is a concept intellectually of doing something for some reason that doesn't have something to do with the self-interest. And that's almost impossible to even manifest in consciousness. It's even hard to describe how doing the right thing wouldn't be, once you understand it's the right thing, that it would become part of your own self-interest to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing, because if you did the wrong thing you would feel bad, so it would be in your self-interest not to do the wrong thing. So as soon as you've identified a right and a wrong, you're going to selfishly do the right thing because you can't live with yourself if you don't, kind of thing. So you're stuck with that anyway. So let's understand briefly again that the mechanism, being described is about the word selfish genes, okay? And the idea is their behavior is, has nothing to do with a self. It just has to do with the fact that there's a self-interest, and that the activity of anything that can have an activity is in that self-interest. And Dawkins' argument was, if you really go, you can just keep reducing the mechanism smaller and smaller, and even the smallest pieces of the mechanism are essentially the ones doing the evolving. I mean, what's evolving is not us as bodies. What evolves is a blueprint, code. And so you're not replicating yourself, you're replicating a code of instructions on how to build a self, okay, how to build a person instructions, and that's what's evolving. So in those instructions can be whole hunks of code that do absolutely nothing and only still exist because there's a survival interest, okay, in attaching yourself, if you're a hunk of code, to some other piece of code. Being attached to some other piece of code will end up getting you into the future. That'll be the byproduct of certain behaviors. So as soon as code is enough code to have a behavior associated with it, it can create behaviors that are complete nonsense behaviors that just have to do with its existence and don't even have anything to do with making a human being. And so those pieces of code will exist as just random circles and random swirls and random nonsense doodles in your DNA code. There's doodles in your DNA code, and they only exist because the code itself has through the process of the evolutionary process, incidentally created associations with other pieces, and because the other pieces can't be done away with, they can't be done away with. That kind of thing. But it's all parasitical, it's all associational and behavioral. Yes, and behavior that gets you into the future, gets the identity that is you, the number of bits and digits, that's all that counts, is the blueprint.
As if it's a kind of simple mechanism, as if there's a gene for altruism, a gene that causes, almost in a reflexive way, parents to leap in front of, I don't know, ravaging.
Yeah, so this is kind of silly, right? Because, yeah, the genes don't, no genes do anything that directly. No, we don't function that directly, okay? Although we do have a technical knee jerk, so we do have some simple reflexes, but obviously most of our behavior comes out of this brain thing, okay, with billions of reflexes inside of it. So obviously none of our behavior in that sense is that mechanical. Like, here's an explicit gene, this gene will make you say the word Popeye, on the 7th of July. No, there's no gene that's going to make you say Popeye on the 7th of July. That's just not going to happen. But there could be genes, there will be genes, that will give you a disposition to have a tendency to maybe say Popeye on the 7th of July. Or it might make you think Popeye is very attractive and make you want to watch Popeye, the sailor man, and his adventures in the world. Yeah, there might be genes that will give you some sort of emotional character or some sort of attraction character where you might say, ooh, Popeye has a fantastic ass, and you might find his ass very attractive and then follow Popeye through his adventures and end up saying the word Popeye on the 7th of July because you like Popeye's ass. So, yeah, that is possible. It's a little more than a knee jerk, but it's still a piece of code that basically only exists because in the end it does make you say Popeye on the 7th of July. In the end.
Tigers or causes people to be self-sacrificing in favour of their children or their close loved ones. As if it's almost like an automatic response. You know what I mean? This happens and this happens in response because of a gene. As I say, almost like a knee-jerk reflex.
Yeah, well, it is almost like a knee-jerk. Okay? What the fuck is going on? Stop that. Yeah, it almost is knee-jerk, though. Aren't some of those responses very visceral, very knee-jerk, very crude, very internal? Okay? As soon as you become attached to the little members of your clan, you can see it in all the other great mammals do the same things. They have the same kind of visceral reactions. Any threat to their loved ones, their fuckables, are the product of their fucking. They're going to be very defensive of and have a knee-jerk response as if you're attacking them personally. So, yeah, I think it is pretty knee-jerky, emotional, egotistical, possessive response. Yes, this is my property, you're not allowed to touch my property. That's sort of a visceral, common mammalian response. So you can almost say there's genetic code written to create that response.
It's all mediated by emotions.
Well, emotions don't come from nowhere, so this is just, it's silly to say it's mediated by emotions as if emotions aren't the byproduct of genetic code. They're the byproduct of genetic code. We have the emotions, it's written into our blueprint. All the mammals have common, a variety of, a common basket of emotional responses. They're all, you can see the commonness in all the mammals that have, all the animals that have a brain, you can see a commonness there. Most of them.
Felt senses.
Well,
people,
I hate that rhetoric, felt senses. Like there's some other kind of sense.
Like if one of my kids was in danger, I may not do this, of course, I might be a really selfish human being, but if one of my kids was in danger...
but see, that's not... You might be selfish.
I don't think I would just have this...
Damn, this thing is turned off. The idea of saying, I might be selfish... No, it is selfish when you react based on it being your kids and not somebody else's kids. So when your reaction changes when it's your kids versus some other kid, and you don't get that it's kid that's important, that somehow my kid is important, yeah, then I'd say you've been pretty well duped by the Borg DNA. The DNA owns your ass, and you can't even do the simplest, most rational equations and figure out the only thing that's valuable is the status of the thing, not the your part. The fact that you own it doesn't mean there's some sort of meaningful difference. There's no meaningful difference. That's a delusion in your brain. And yeah, so pretty much you should be reading the God delusion. Because if you think your kids are better than somebody else's kids, you've fallen for a God delusion.
Kind of cold, automatic, jump in front of the train. No, I don't think that would happen. I think what would probably happen if it was quick because I get a rush of anger, maybe, if one of my kids is being attacked.
Right, and that rush of anger isn't something completely controlled by genetic information. Genetic code doesn't create your disposition towards these common emotions of possession, guilt, greed, avarice, the love, desire, lust. These aren't things that are in the genetic code. Of course they are.
Which overwhelmed my...
This really sucks. Come on, YouTube. It's not YouTube's fault, of course. Browser is failing for some unknown reason. Failing dismally. Oh, okay. Yeah, I played this earlier, so maybe it's forgotten it. I'll reload the page and have to start over. Right about there, I think. Right about
Which
here.
A loved one. And if it wasn't quick, if it was more slow, you know, if I was held by one of those kind of Sophie's Choice kind of situations, and given lots of time to think about it, then it would still be my emotionality, my emotional responses, which were figuring in any kind of choice I made, presumably. And you know, I hope I would be as sacrificial in then as was appropriate.
Yeah, well, as is common. So we have these common emotional reactions. So some emotions are more visceral than others. I mean, they're more rudimentary, more genetic. And then other emotions are controlled by maturation and conditioning. So, you know, you could argue that certain preferences regarding food choices are conditioned. They're not genetic. They're something you are raised into rather than born into. So you can certainly make a distinction about what part of our character is nurture and what part of it is nature, but the the nature certainly provides the opportunity for the nurture. There would be no nurture if nature first doesn't give you a plate of choices. And much of the nurture really is just about whether or not you're going to be, you know, there's two choices or three choices, but there's not a whole lot of choices. Okay, there's very little opportunity for, I mean, there might be an opportunity for you to be maturated into homosexuality or some kind of deviant sex practice, but how deviant, there's going to probably be a limitation on how deviant it can get in terms of how distant from the productive biological function it gets.
So as I say, it's not knee-jerk, is it? It's not like... It's not just the automatic firing of a response of a bodily behavior.
Yeah, again, the counter argument to that would be that somehow somebody's arguing that human behavior is knee-jerk. So I don't think anybody's arguing that. I don't think anybody would dispute that. So this is almost like some sort of straw argument of some kind, like who thinks brains are that... you know, that lack that degree of uniqueness. Of course, every individual is programmed differently.
If you're triggered by a genetic predisposition, it's an emotion. It's mediated by emotion. But that's a weird...
Well, again, mediated by emotion, you should just, you know, you do finally say it at the end of the video, but what's the point of saying it at the end when you use the word 17 times here and not qualified it by saying, but yes, emotional dispositions are something genetically provided.
The thing about that, it seems to me, which is just open to exploitation, and of course as is exploited in some areas of the animal kingdom, which is...
There's exploitation in some areas of the animal kingdom. Now, isn't that just hilarious? I mean, the way to be successful on planet Earth is to be a parasite. You want to win the biological evolution survival game? Yeah, become a parasite. Number one way to win. I mean, I think statistically it could be proven that the animals that have the most durable success on planet Earth are parasitical. And almost every carnivore is parasitical in its very nature. It's stealing other animals, do the trouble of acquiring the star energy, and the carnivores just steal it. They steal somebody else's labor.
there's in many situations there's no guarantee that the organism that you're sacrificing yourself for is actually and it shares any genetic material at all. I mean, that's what cuckoos do, isn't it?
Right, so now he's implying that there's some sort of structural flaw in evolution where somehow it somewhere rewards animals that aren't selfish, and that's just nonsense. It only does so incidentally and as aberrant behavior, not common behavior. So the fact that slavery works is a fact of nature. You can't, there's no disputing this argument, okay, that selfishness works from the individualistic survival point of view, and at any kind of cost. That's how evolution works. So I mean, there's no altruism in an octopus giving birth to 10,000 live young. It lays eggs, but they're born fully functional little octopi. And 9,999 of them will die in their before they reach their first birthday. That's a mass murder on a huge scale. Fully functional little octopuses will be mass murdered for this notion of creating some sort of mega octo or whatever. What's the word they use? Well, anyway, the master, the octo master or something.
Cuckoos lay their eggs in other birds' nests. It is cuckoos, I think. They push the other birds' eggs out, lay their own eggs in its place, and then the other bird comes in, and in a kind of altruistic display. No, it is not altruistic. So again, you're the one griping about other people's lack of care when it comes to science, and here you are spouting crap like that. There's absolutely no reason to believe the birds that raise the cuckoo have any idea that they've been fooled. They don't know the physics. They don't know how big eggs are supposed to be. They don't know any of that stuff. They react to, because they have smaller brains, in a knee-jerk manner, react to the gaping mouth that says, put food in here. Okay? They're not having the same emotion. They're dinosaurs, for fuck's sake. Okay? Birds are fucking dinosaurs. Alright? They're living a different kind. They're living for a different reason and by different triggers. But there's actually no reason to think they're altruistically raising the poor orphan cuckoo. That's not what's happening. They're doing it in the same selfish manner as if it was their own kid. They have been fooled. Being fooled isn't evidence that evolution provides for an opportunity for something. No, it just means that evolution can't create mega brains in every single organism, so they're never foolable. No, that's right. Evolution will not make you incapable of being deceived. It just can't do it. It can't create the hardware necessary never to make a mistake. And the fact that some birds make the mistake of raising a cuckoo who's parasitically abusing them is just tough luck. Play of self-sacrifice as hatches and raises the cuckoos.
I mean, look, you can't use words like self-sacrifice. They're not self-sacrificing. They're not in any way conscious of any burden that they're enduring for the benefit of a cuckoo. They're doing what they're horny to do, which is take care of, to put food in the thing in the nest.
It's young. And of course, I'm guessing that there's been thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of adults who've raised the children of other people. I guess that's harder for a woman to do than a man. But I'm sure mistakes happen in hospitals occasionally, and babies get switched around without anybody noticing. And so there probably are hundreds of them.
Yeah. So again, it's not self-sacrificing. If they've been fooled, then it's just a mistake. And yes, mistakes will happen, but that doesn't mean that evolution is saying mistakes are good. It's just saying it's not going to spend the extra resources to make no mistakes possible. So we don't build anything that's completely fail-safe. Why don't we build anything that's completely fail-safe? Oh, that's right, because it would cost too much, right? So your car isn't as fail-safe as it could be because it would be too expensive to make it fail-safe. So evolution is under these requirements that it has to make hardware, it has to, the machines to be survivable can't be preposterously expensive to build, or that design isn't going to succeed because it takes up too much resources to make a copy. These machines have to be efficient to some standard of the environmental demands. And yeah, you're just not going to be a winner in the competitive environment if you're that high maintenance that we have to put all this fail-safe hardware on you so you're never fooled into raising somebody else's kid.
Thousands of millions of people around the world being all self-sacrificial and altruistic.
No, they haven't been either one of those things. They haven't self-sacrificed in the sense that for some other purpose than their desire to raise their kids. So they're sad. That's selfish. Altruistic, again, why use this word if it doesn't going to mean anything? If you've been fooled, you haven't been altruistic. You can't possibly think that it's okay to use the word altruistic when you've been fooled into thinking it's your land that you're farming, and you work hard every day farming it, and you don't realize that your deed is for the land behind you, and you just farm somebody else's land. You haven't been altruistic if you farmed the wrong land because you didn't know it wasn't your land. You can't call that altruism. So here you are critiquing other people's conduct in terms of how they talk about things and how sloppy they are, and then you pile this pile of crap slop onto the internet. So fuck you, hypocrite.
In favour of children for whom they share no genetic material at all.
Yeah, so they make a mistake. Yeah, that's right. Organisms aren't perfect. Oh, what a surprise.
Now that might just be a kind of glitch in the system.
Yeah, duh.
And I guess it probably is.
Yes, oh, I guess it probably is. So why did you bring it up? Oh, that's right, because you're trying to imply something else, and then you play this little backslidey game, as you commonly do. Well, maybe what I just said is complete crap, but don't think so, because it sounded like a cool story, right? Yeah, it sounded like a good fairy tale, right, while it was going. This is such bullshit.
It's kind of a weird glitch, isn't it? I mean, if I were going to design a selfish genetic system, if I was going to do that, and I had the tools available that I must have had available to design the system we've got right now, if I was just nature doing it, in fact, I would build in safeguards against that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you would spend the preposterously extra money to try to create fail-safe, all right, when it would cost you for a tiny, tiny improvement a huge amount. Evolution seems to have figured out that, yes, it doesn't care how many things it tortures. So it basically says to organisms, go ahead, trees, create 1 billion seeds. Go ahead and kill most of them, all right? Sentence most of them to a horrible death. Well, seeds aren't going to have a horrible death, but you get my drift. All right, so there's organisms that just produce, like fish, preposterous numbers of young, okay? And the game is, yes, so what if most of them get horribly killed, okay? Because the one that survives will be worth it. And so that's its economics. That's the game it's playing. And that's the game described in the selfish gene, essentially, that wherever you go, okay, whether you create a gang or whether you create a civilization, no matter what size the behavioral entity is, the behavioral entity will ultimately, in a competitive environment, kill the competition. It will need to do that, or it will not exist. So the gang will figure out how to join with other gangs so they can kill everybody else. All right, the Incas were going to kill, then all the North American tribes were probably doomed to die. If the Europeans didn't show up, the Incas were probably going to wipe them all out.
You know, certainly if, in the case of the cuckoo,
Or the Aztecs. Pick one.
because you know, the birds that raise cuckoos, quite often the eggs of a cuckoo are quite big compared to the eggs of some of the birds' nests in whose nests they lay eggs. So at the very least, if I was some kind of natural designer, if I was evolution just doing its job.
Yeah, so he's critiquing evolution, like evolution failed somehow. So you basically have something that has a bird brain, right? Birds have what are called bird brains, right? And yet they know how to fly. They know how to keep themselves clean. They know how to, not get eaten. They can build a nest they can sleep in out of sticks. Okay, they figure out how to do all this fucking crap. So you have all that information, all that knowledge, flying, aerodynamics is in their brain. All right, and this guy's critiquing them because they can't tell a big egg from a small egg, that they don't realize that egg size matters. When 99.99% of the time, when they lay eggs in a nest, a cuckoo doesn't show up and knock the eggs out of the nest. So something that works 99.99% of the time, which is don't give a fuck how big the egg is, just put food in the thing that hatches. It works 99.999999% of the time not to give a shit what kind of egg is hatching in your nest. Okay, genetically, because it's going to be your egg that's in the nest. Okay, that's going to be the fact. So now the bird should somehow, for that 0.00001 circumstance that might happen, somehow the bird's little brain shouldn't be thinking about how to fly or how not to get eaten by a predator. It should be thinking about, is that egg the right size? Yeah, oh, no, I don't think so. No, I think evolution's got it right, and I think you're full of shit.
I would at least give these birds better eyesight and be able the ability to see.
See, he's making jokes. This is just such easy. This is easy bake oven science. I would at least give the birds better eyesight, like, oh, they somehow don't see the egg size. Now he's claiming the big egg bird can't see that the egg is a different size. Not that they can't understand it, that they don't have a whole bunch of programming that says somehow they should react to big eggs and go, oh shit, there's a big egg in the nest, let's run away. You know.
That's not my fucking egg. I'm not hatching that. Or, alternatively, well, it's not an egg, but yeah, I'll hatch it anyway.
Yeah, well, see, so that just shows how much this guy knows about evolution. I mean, there's a virus that fucking rats can get that makes them attracted to the smell of cat urine. Okay, so it basically ensures that the rat is going to commit suicide. And the reason why it works is because it's essential to the life cycle of the microbe. I guess it's not a virus, it's a microbe. For it to get inside of a cat's digestive system. So the only way the microbe replicates is by getting into a cat's digestive system. And so it basically just uses the rat to go insane and run into the cat and get eaten. Yeah, that's how evolution works. That's what it does on purpose. It creates insipid and insane slave relationships, parasitical relationships, completely insidious relationships. All right? That's what evolution does. Because it works for the thing that's going to gain its future through the mechanism. The owners win in evolution.
Something like that. I would give humans, I would give human males, and human females indeed, the capacity to detect their own offspring. If I was going to be a genuinely selfish gene designer. You know, you could smell your kids, and this kid doesn't smell right, it smells very much like the...
Well, again, even that doesn't work, right? Because the truth of the matter is let's say my sister marries my cousin, okay? So let's say I have a male cousin, and my sister marries the male cousin, and they have a baby. Okay, and then I decide to go to Europe or something and fuck around with some kind of whatever. Somebody who's got like really old, ancient European history or something. Right? Now, which kid is going to be more genetically similar to me? My sister's or my own? And the fact is, my sister's kid will be. So I'd be better off raising my sister's kid than raising my own. Okay, yes, genetics isn't, you're sitting there saying, if I was evolution, I would do evolution perfectly. I would resolve all disputes based on what is in the best interest of certain genetic code. Well, you can't even do that, because like I said, in certain circumstances, it would be impossible to tell. There'd be like 45% similarity here and 44% similarity there. And how do you make decisions based on these tiny, minute differences? All right, but those are the circumstances that evolution creates. Because it isn't perfect. It's a fucking fast to dirty system. It's not a fucking elegant system. It's a dirty system. It's a crude fucking force, for Christ's sake.
Walk down the road, I would say. That would be my system.
Yeah, well, my system would be nobody would be stupid enough to think there's some purpose in enslaving children to their own fucking asshole desires. I'm a great and successful human because I made a baby. Yeah, that would be in my book of stupid motherfucker.
The porridge is very thick.
Yeah, another reason why you shouldn't have bread. You can't make porridge.
But we don't do that. We routinely do it. And I think it's for that reason that I'm just not entirely happy with a lot of the selfish gene idea, really.
Yeah, so now he's implied that we routinely do the thing that is totally not routine. So it's not routine that somebody raises somebody else's kids. 99.99% of parents raise their own kids. Okay? It's the aberrant that does the adoption thing or some other thing, and they usually do it because they don't have some other choice. Okay? It's usually because they're infertile or something else. So there's usually causes to that effect that have nothing to do with anything called altruism. They have to do with the fact that the person has limited choices. So this is just a stupid argument. So you just imply that there's some sort of real mechanism in evolution that somehow is rewarding totally abnormal behavior, and it just doesn't exist. It's just a crock of shit. Frankly, there's error code all over the place. Mistakes are made all over the place because it's a crude force, not a sophisticated force.
Particularly as it's kind of bastardized in simpler versions.
You should talk. That's what this fucking video was. You just bastardized the selfish gene into a fucking easy bake oven, pink plastic. Let's make a super silly sweet biscuit and call it food. This is crap.
Because clearly our emotions are being the results of evolutionary development. And, of course...
Yeah, so it makes sense to say this, right? Instead of saying that right there in the beginning where you're talking about, well, it's not knee-jerk. Well, instead of saying this, back right over here, why didn't you do it right in the beginning? Why didn't you right in the beginning saying, of course emotions are controlled by genetics? Oh, that's right, because it doesn't allow you to do this silly, I'm going to tell a fairy story and maybe make you believe it bullshit. You can't get away with fairy stories then. If you say right in the beginning, it's a fairy story.
Moderated and mediated and interpreted by cultural and social situations. The Abominable History Man's been doing some good stuff on emotions. And how our emotions are kind of historically contingent. Although they feel natural, they're often not quite as natural as they feel.
Yeah, like what? Like what emotion you're talking about? Like greed? No, that hasn't changed any. The basic emotions haven't changed any. Frankly, I mean, here we are thousands of years into our development as a human species, and racism is rampant. Come on. Grow up. Smell the shit.
But yeah, so yes, undoubtedly our emotions, or at least the mechanism of emotional generation, is a product of evolution for sure. But how that's deployed, how it works, how it's
yeah, right. Like all mammals, we are conditioned. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yes, you can teach. Chimpanzees teach their kids how to catch termites. Yeah, catching termites with a stick isn't genetically controlled. That's right. But the capacity to do it, the capacity to teach your child or the kid being mimicking machine, that is genetically controlled. So yes, the capacity is provided by genetics. The exact utilization of the capacity is evolves as memes, and that was also in Dawkins' book, Memes.
Figures in setting up of families and communities and societies, who we choose to care about and how we express care, who we choose to sacrifice.
Who we choose, right, how we are programmed. So these again aren't really choices, they're choices of conditioning and exposure and understanding. And that's all they are. So yes, sometimes you can understand a lot better than your own disposition, and you can alter your behavior because you know something's wrong. You could basically have a desire, let's say, you could be a pedophile and you don't molest kids because you know it's wrong. Yeah, so you could have a disposition, you could have impulses, you could have even a genetic function, and you, through memes, can understand that that is for some other genetic reason, that has a, that puts you on this idea of intellectual integrity or something, the integrity gene. So yeah, you have an integrity gene where some kind of logical continuity gene, or some gene that says I don't like dissonance in my brain. So you force yourself to resolve things that don't make sense. You force them to make sense. And so, yeah, if you have that kind of disposition, then you could overcome some other genetic defect. Compensation. Yeah, that's something mammals are capable of. Compensating for their limitations or weaknesses.
Sacrifice ourselves for, and how we do that. And even things like, just to kind of return to the self thing and self-like thing, who we choose to incorporate within the circle, that's the circle of care and the circle of selfness. One of the words that's often used to describe...
Yeah, and it's often by really crappy reasons, right? I mean, gangs, it's all racism, it's all kind of the crudest, dumbest standards of belonging. Okay, membership in the, there's that famous joke, I wouldn't belong to any club that would have you as a member kind of thing. Our standards for fellowship suck.
Like altruism and those kind of self-sacrificing moments is selflessness, isn't it? We talk about people being selfless. But I think in some ways that's a misnomer. Because just as a self-like gene or a selfish gene could actually be a number of genes all working together.
Well, look, anytime you do something that you just do for rational reasons, like picking up the litter, okay? You have litter, you have the choice to throw it out the car window, or you have the choice to put it in the console and throw it away later. In a sense, you're being selfless when you just do the simple recognition that, okay, it's to my convenience to just chuck it out the window, but the right thing to do in the interest of all of civilization is to not throw my litter out the fucking window. So again, it is selfless. I mean, and it's only selfish in the sense that, yes, you're not going to do something you know to be wrong. Once you've identified right and wrong, yeah, you're going to choose right, not wrong.
The idea of the self of that, what constitutes the boundaries of that self, isn't just that tiny little string of letters, is it? It's going to be a whole bunch of strings of letters separated by lots of other strings.
No, it isn't. Okay, but yeah, obviously the string that matters is it has to be able to produce some effect, to be able to have anything that could be called a self-interest or a self-control. It can't control anything if it doesn't produce a behavior. But obviously, none of these genes could possibly control anything in the intelligent way. They can only control in the sense that they create a cause, in the sense that they react and they create a new action in the environment. But yeah, the new actions are often going to be parasitical.
So I think this idea of what constitutes self is better understood, not as a necessarily understood as something which is just bounded by flesh. You know what I mean? I think if I...
Yeah, look, your liver, your heart, all your organs have basically been enslaved, okay? They're not there by choice or volition or said, I want to be a liver, or I want to be a heart, or I want to be a kidney. No, they weren't given any choices here. They didn't have any choice to run away, to go somewhere else. No, they're enslaved cells. They're made to function for the purpose of this organism. And the same thing happens in civilizations. You create slavery, and you create wage slavery, or create some other mechanism that basically enslaves something else to to some ambition of your selfishness. So you have gangs that are made out of selfish individuals that come together so they can selfishly now as a group dominate other groups. I mean, the hierarchy never ends, and the search for dominance and power and control is what the whole game is about, winning. Okay, the evolution game is about winning, and you win by destroying.
If I was to do something which appeared selfless, and don't hold your breath waiting for that, but if I was to do something which appeared selfless, I don't think it would be selfless in the sense of, well, I'm just giving up myself in favour of that other self over there. I think it's because I've got a broader sense of self. I think what's generated those moments, in moments of love, and care.
Yeah, moments of love. What is love? So that's such a scientific term. Moments of live. What is that? Lust, you mean? Ownership, possession. What is love? What the fuck? Oh, it's my kind of people. It's my child. Yeah, that's love. Yeah, no, that's ego bullshit.
Maybe even anger for different reasons. Is a sense of, there's a wider sense of self, a self in which incorporates both yourself, your own body and its temporary needs, and the body and needs of the other individual.
Yeah, the dependency. That's right. There's a dependency between the in every mammal species, there's a dependency between the males and their sacrificial nature, in the sense that they'll go out and do the fighting with the threat animals. They'll protect their kids from the hordes that want to kill their kids and rape their wife. So yeah, this is the game we play. Okay, we're tied to things. Yeah, and that's a mechanical function of the genetics. Duh.
You know what I mean? That idea of what a self is kind of flows out, cocoons you both in that kind of egg-shaped.
It's still parasitical, okay? There's the relationship between men and women is a parasitical relationship. Women prey, on the likelihood that the male will get killed saving her from some kind of harm, and the males are preying, are exploiting the sexual favors of the woman. So let's not pretend it isn't just grotesquely parasitic if you want to clinically and rationally and scientifically analyze it. But you're not being much of a scientist here. It is complete pseudoscience, so you're guilty of the crime you persecute others for, and you're just a fucking hypocrite.
Circle of love. Or something like that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it
so
doesn't.
Again, a self-like gene.
Rubbish.
If genes are self-like, they're not self-like in the sense...
Yeah, he didn't write the book, The Self-Like Gene, okay? It's called the selfish gene, okay? Selfish has a meaning that doesn't have anything really to do with self. It just has to do with the ish part, which is dominated by some controlling function that has no giving nature, that has nothing to do with deserve or fairness or right or wrong. It only has to do with the best interests of a certain piece of code getting into the long-term future. And yes, that's part of the equation here, is there is some strategies that'll work for 10 years and there's some strategies that'll work for 10 million years. Crocodiles have been here a long time, and it's not because they play the love game.
Of being easily bounded, they're probably communities. It's a selfish community, a self-like community, capable of expansion and contraction.
Yeah, it's called a gang, okay? It's not a community, it's a tribe, it's a gang. So quit trying to pretty this up, community, like a bunch of individuals just show up and go, oh, let's be a community. Sorry, no fucking sale, that is bullshit.
And it probably mediates through the emotions, not individual selves, it seems to me, but self-like communities. Self, which might be communities of cells that we call individuals.
Self-like. Again, it's just stupid. No, they're selfish communities. They're communities that the Democrats will try to kill the Republicans, and the Greens will try to kill the Liberals or Labor, and that's all it is about. It's just about fighting the gang war.
Or might be communities of individuals. I know I'm going towards group evolution. Maybe I shouldn't. Never mind. Yeah, that'll do. Something to do with selflessness and selfishness? Porridge?
Yeah. Fucking plastic, synthetic, trivial, silly crap science. Crap science.